Hey guys, how's it going? I know it's been a while since I made any kind of videos, but here we are again with another awesome, so to speak, Unity tutorial. So we're going to do a health system that displays a player's health up here as a percentage, as well as having a health bar right down here. So in here, I've created two scripts. We have a health script and a damager script. As you can see, these are empty scripts, nothing special about them. And if you've watched my tutorials before, I always say, get rid of all the crap in the middle. That is the absolute first thing we do. So I actually want to try something. Okay, good. So I am set up with the Unity preferences. So the first thing we need to do is we need a float, and this will be called health percentage. And I'm probably just going to go ahead and make this a private, although we may have to change that later on. On the start, we're going to say health percentage equals 100. And then we have one more thing that we need to do. This will be a public damage, or sorry, I need to make this a method. This will be called damage. This will be a float damage. So this actually takes in a variable of some kind. You can't just pass in an int unless you convert it to a float. So the way that this works is that we will have our damage script, and we're going to type in a serialized field, private, and we're going to be looking for the health script. There we go, health script. So because we're putting this into the inspector, we don't actually have to worry about doing start, getting the component, and all that. The biggest thing that we will need to do is right here, we are going to be calling text, and you can't just say, let me go ahead and do this, serialized field, text. You'll see it. We have a class that comes up, but it's requiring Unity engine.ui. However, for this project, we're using TextMesh Pro. So instead of doing that, we're going to say using TM Pro. By doing that, now I can do TextMesh Pro UGUI, and we will say text. We'll say text mesh. That's what we'll call it. And once again, we'll make this a private. And so what we want to do is we want to say damage. Actually, we'll say health percentage minus damage. Minus equals damage. There we go. So what we're going to do after that is we'll say text mesh, and we'll do this. So essentially is what's happening is we're taking in this component right here of a value, and we're passing it back as a string. Now you don't really have to do this with floats. We can just do this. But then we also have a slider. This does require Unity Engine UI. Oh, that's right. So we do have to do toString because this is being populated as a string, which is no big deal. Now, this is at 100, and we could totally just come here and say max value 100, and that's probably what we'll end up doing. But we can also convert this to a percentage. The way that we convert this to a percentage is just simply, we need one more slider health.
Yeah, I meant to do it last time.
Slider health equals health percentage divided by 100. And then we can simply say, when you get the slider first, serialized field, private, slider, health slider. And so last thing we're going to do here is we'll just say health slider when you get the value, dot value equals will be slider health. So once we have done that, we're actually going to do an on trigger enter other dot game object dot tag, yes, minus player. And we can actually set this up as whatever we want. So this could be character or whatever. I'm just doing this just to make it easy. We're actually going to say health script. We're going to have health script, and we will say, let's see, what do we want to do? We're actually just going to say damage, and we're going to create another float on here. And the float we're going to pass in will be the damage amount we just made. So now that we're back into Unity, we can actually come in here. I'm going to call this health slider. We're going to do a few things here. So the first thing we need is we have the temp player. We're going to pass the health script on him. We have a cube, which will be temp hazard. And we're going to pass the damager script onto this. We're going to set this at, say, 10. Or actually, let's say 7. And we're going to pass the health script onto this. And we're going to come back here to this guy. And we're going to pass the health text here. Or actually, we need health amount text. And we're going to do the health slider. So now is what should happen. Should, keyword. If I press F on this guy, hit play, we can come over here. Oh, text still equals null. So the reason why the text still equals null, because I never actually set it here in the start. So we're going to say there we go. So now if I've done this correctly, these values should update. There we go. And so this is passing through. But the reason why it's not doing anything right now is because I haven't actually assigned this as a player. So now, when I hit play, generally is what should happen is, oh, no rigid body. So if I add a rigid body, we can watch that fall through the sky. Let's add a rigid body, and we're not going to use gravity. We'll hit play. This should start, there we go. So we can see that the slider is decreasing and the health is decreasing as well. So one of the things that you may run into is that you'll forget to assign certain things, like I may have forgotten to assign the health slider or whatever. As long as that object is active, is what we can actually do is come in here on both of these, make them both private, and we can come up here and type in TextMesh Pro UGUI, and this will be called Go Text. Although an easier way to do this, probably slightly more efficient, so to speak, go tmp equals GameObject.find, and we're going to look for our health amount text. So amount text, this is called our health slider. Now, capitalization is important. It's very important. Once we have those, now we can simply say text mesh. Yep, that's the one I want. And then we can say slider health equals go slider dot get component. And this is going to be of type slider. Now this actually turned into an add component, so we actually need to change this to a get component. And we'll see if this one is not liking something. That's because I did the wrong thing. I did slider health, not health slider. So there we go. And the last thing we want to do is, for this one, because if we want this to damage both enemies and the player, the best way to do it is to do a start. And we're going to do a we're actually just going to do a health script, and we're going to do a, how do I want to do this? You can do something very similar to this. The only thing is, if you do it this way, you need to look through all of the game objects, and so one of the ways you can do that is by, what is going on in your background over there?
I have no idea.
Okay, so anyways, one of the ways that we can do this, we can look for all types of game objects, or we can look for game objects with this. Probably the best way to do it is to... I'm kind of hesitant to do it this way, and that's just because I don't want it to... I don't want enemies to load their disabled and it not find what it's looking for. So I'm actually going to leave it like this, and I don't know if that's necessarily a better way of doing it, but it is one way to do it. Now, let's say I did need to look for these. I don't know, like here on the health canvas, I need to look for all types of text. If I was going to do that, is what I could do is, if this is on the parent item, I could simply get all the components and children. So that is one way to do it. And the next thing we need to do, if health percentage is less than 0 or less than equal to 0, say game over. And we're going to create a very quick let's see, we need one more thing on here. We're going to create one more UI element. This is going to be text. This will be game over txt. And we're actually going to make this, well, first of all, we need to make this Text Mesh Pro. We're not doing any of that crappy regular text stuff. No. Over text. And we're going to increase the font size rather large. We're going to go ahead and disable wrapping, and so it'll pop up in the very center. And we're going to make this like a bright red or something, or somewhat bright red. So we're going to have this, we're going to leave that on. And for the health system, we're actually going to do the same thing we did earlier. Game object, go, game text, equals object.find. And then we're going to say game over text equals so one thing to keep in mind is that with this we will have to disable the actual text component itself, and that is absolutely fine. And so what we'll do is we'll say game over text dot enabled equals false, and we'll say game over text dot enabled equals true, game over text dot text equals game over. So as you can see with the temp layer, there are no serialized fields. The text up here equals null, this text is up here, this bar is empty, but once we hit play, the bar is filled, the text is gone. And now we can see that by doing this, the player's health is going down. Once the player's health is less than 0, it says game over. Now, obviously, we don't want to display a negative value, so is what we will do is we will say health percentage equals 0, health slider dot value equals 0. And now is what should happen if I can type. It should compile. And then we should see that the health will always be at 0 no matter what. I say that. Okay, so what ended up happening is it did trigger, but it still took a couple more hits. So it did go to 0, and then it stayed at -7. So there are other ways that we can do this and make this a lot more optimized, but this is the base idea on how we're doing this. And one of the other things we can do is take this we want to always check to see if it's greater than 0. Only if it's greater than 0 will it go through this line. Go through this block, shall I say. So in theory is what should happen. We're down to 2. So it registered as 0, but still did not update for us, which is okay. We're getting closer. I think is what happened. Yeah, I think is what happened is it went through this block, but we probably need to put this outside and just do... Oh, wait, I know exactly what it was. I forgot to do something. You know what that was? I forgot to set it to the string. Kind of an important step there. So some of you are watching this right now, you're probably like, why the hell didn't you just do it once? And for those of y'all who are wondering what I'm talking about, if I hit copy on these, I can go ahead and delete these out of here, and I can delete these out of here, and have this as the last thing that runs.
Why does this sound like an actual like cowboy song?
So this way, it will always do this last. So as you can see, we're definitely going lower, and it is now working as we'd expect it to. It doesn't go below 0, and this goes down low, down to 0, and then this game over will show up. So now you're probably wondering, well, how do we add health? The way that we add health is very similar to how we do the other. This will be health percentage plus equals health. Additionally, we could run it in here and it would give us the exact same thing. The only downside is that then we can go above 100 and we'd have to create other statements in there, which is why we're creating a new method for this. And so what we're going to do is, once again, we're going to take this awesome stuff right here and paste it in here. And we'll do a health check, say if health percentage is greater than or equal to 100, then we'll simply return. So we'll still use our damager script for this, but instead of doing, or actually, is what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to duplicate these guys.
Fucking like cowboy thing and everything going strong.
Alright, so this will give us 10 health. The other will do the exact opposite. And is what we'll do for this real fast is we're actually going to say if, and we'll say damage amount is, less than 0 will damage. Else, we will health script dot health damage amount. Alright, so now that we have that set, all we have to do now is just hit play. We will do some damage to the player. It doesn't. It hadn't actually been set. So what we're going to do is... how do I want to do this? Health amount. That's why. If I could spell health, it would help. And we technically don't even need this. We can just run both of these. This isn't the most optimized way to do it, but it's fine. So the hazard will have 7 damage. And then we have the other hazard, quote unquote, down here, which will do 10. So now's what should happen. Alright, that does damage. Alright, so we're still going above, and that is absolutely fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down here. We're actually going to just set this right here. Health percentage equals 100. And by doing so, we can just take this guy. We see no change. Take this guy. Then we'll take this guy. And we'll see that we always go back to 100. And that is the awesomeness of this. Now, one last thing I want to show is if I was doing this and let's just say like I only needed a one-lined item for a method. I'm actually going to come down here. We will do invoke, and this will be over change. We'll wait for 1 second. And we'll just say game over text dot text equals so we're going to kill a player again. After 1 second, it changes to retry. Any questions?
Honestly, no. I did something similar for a project for school. Actually.
It's actually a very common way of doing health system. It has its advantages and disadvantages, but one of the best advantages as it has, like here's a common thing I've seen somebody do, is they'll do an update and then they'll do some health stuff here. The only downside is that's doing this every single frame. Whereas this, it only does it whenever this trigger is entered, and it only calls it one time.
Yeah, I for my project, I just completely wiped out update. I didn't even use it. I just made different drawing a blank. different methods for everything I needed.
So, do you know how we would combine this into this and do it real easily?
No.
So remember this guy over here, right? He has a health amount of 10. We're going to put this back at 0, and we're just going to say -10. I'm not going to hit play. I'm going to take this guy, damage our player 1 time. See how it doesn't go over 100?
Yeah.
So you can definitely do it like that. There's nothing wrong with it. One of the games I made, that's actually how I do it, is I just have an extra if statement saying, hey, if your health is at here, then ignore it. Now, one of the biggest things to keep in mind is that this isn't the only way to do a health system. You can actually have different scripts that keep track of that, and that would normally be what you'd want to do. So instead of like calling it here in health, where we set everything right here, we would actually want to take this and move it elsewhere. So we might have a in fact, I'm probably just going to make that private. And so this is where we'd have that. And then we'd have something right here that says load settings. And if we were to come in here, I'm just going to get rid of this. Before we run this, we're going to say health percentage, or actually, let's go ahead and do player prefs dot set float. We're going to do percentage, and we'll set the value of whatever our health percentage is. So then we have this up here where we're always setting it to 100. So we're actually going to set this get float. Alright, so as what we've done, let me go ahead and back over the code. Each time we take damage, we're saving that amount. Once we start the game, this will go into a load settings. Once we have loaded the settings, it will get our float of what we saved last time. If it equals 0, we'll start back off at 100. So, if we hit play, this should be at 100 because its default value is 0. When we come over here, we're going to take damage. Now we'll be at 86. When we hit play, we should now be at 86. If we take this guy and add, we'll now be at 96. So once we start playing again, we're still at 96. And you can also see the health bar also increasing, decreasing as well. Or at least I hope you can see that. So now we're just going to test it one more time.
Yeah, I can see it.
We'll see how that all loads in just fine. And now we're just going to die. So obviously when you die, we'll reload the level. And this is what the player will see. Pretty sniffy, ain't it?
Yeah, they're really awesome.
There are other ways to do... Now, this isn't a super modular health script. The best way to do it is if you have a... Like, if we're going to make this as a super modular script, we'd want to come over here and say, if go game text does not equal null. And then right here, we want to say, if go TMP does not equal null. If go slider does not equal null. And so you're like, well, that's great. you're checking to see if those are null. But what about down here where you're calling them? Well, that's actually a very good question. Oops, wrong spot. If we put a question mark, where is it supposed to go? I could have sworn it's supposed to be after. I might actually have to look that one up. But generally, like if we were to do an audio source, I can actually use that as audio source AS. So if we're going to play this, I think it's before. Yeah. This basically just checks to see if we can play it or not. Something like this, we really can't do it. I'm not 100% sure why. I think it's because we're actually calling a local variable instead of an actual method. But that's where the question mark would come in. This is basically saying, hey, if the audio isn't null, play.
Okay.
And of course, if we did use this as a modular script, we'd still have to, we'd have to do something with these. We couldn't just leave them here. But, yeah, it's just a little quick roundabout thing. Now, did you know you can also call methods inside of methods?
I did know that.
Oh. Do you know how to do a for each statement instead of a for int I equals 0 statement?
I do not.
So, we're going to do one last thing. We're actually going to use the audio because I've already made it, because, why not? Audio player. There we go. Since audio didn't want to do it. Now, obviously, this is going to be a lot of them, right? So we're going to do it for each, and we're going to do for each audio source, we'll say I, N, and this will be audio player. Now, is what this will do is this will be, well, first we want to do I dot get component, or it'll actually be get components, and this will be audio source. Now, obviously, this would never compile because it doesn't know where it's getting them from, and it may just be this one game object. But this is how you can do something easier instead of doing a for loop. So, this would really be handy. Like, let's say each one of these text components had an audio source in them. Then we could actually say get components children. Let's see. Yeah, get components and children. And this way, it would get every single audio source and every single child, if this script was attached to the health canvas, of course. But it would get every single audio source and all these items.
That is awesome.
So the biggest advantage that we'd have with that, let's say, for example, we had overworld, and we don't care about the event system right now. We just care about these. We put them in the overworld, and we need check for audio. So if we had this script right here, we could literally do the same for each loop, and this script right here would get the component of audio source in every single one of these. And we'd never have to populate the fields. The advantage is then we can just simply call this script and get the component directly that way. Alternatively, you could just do a regular GameObject.find. There are several ways to do it, but that's neither here nor there. So that's the health system. That's a little bit on the for each. Hope you learned something.
I did.
That is awesome. And you gotta admit, it's actually really simple, isn't it?
It is.
So, well, if you don't have any questions, that will do it for this tutorial. I'll upload this video, and yeah, I guess I'll talk to you later then.
Yeah, I'll talk to you later.
All right, later, dude.
Bye.